If you have to pick, let's say, what is a good case for you, where you'll not say no. So, what are the top three things that you look for a case when you have to pick someone?
So,
There's not a lot of people coming into this path. So, in your view, have you seen this gone like stricter in terms of the policies?
absolutely. I think there is just a heightened level of scrutiny that we have not seen before, and it does forces us attorneys to adapt. I had somebody working in my office recently who was a retired immigration officer, so he gave us a lot of juicy insights into how the agency works. So I'd be happy to share those with you here as well. If I can at least, you know, give them insight into maybe a strategy that may work best for their case.
Success depends most on talent, or is it timing or storytelling? Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Xecurity Pulse. This is your host, Taha, Sajid. And today we are going to discuss all about immigration's cases from EB1 to NIW, to how this immigration policy have been changing, new trends have been going on. And to discuss all of this, we have a special guest today with us, Ms. Ingrid Perez. I've been following her content on LinkedIn. She's been really helping a lot of people, from scientists to cybersecurity to engineers to data scientists. I mean, the success stories have been amazing, and I would like to have her on the show. So thank you, Ingrid, for your time, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
So to start off, Ingrid, let us talk about briefly on your background. That how did you end up coming into this immigration category where you are dealing with EB1 and IW cases, and briefly, like what inspires you to be the lawyer in the first place?
Oh, yeah. So when I went to law school, I had no idea what kind of law I wanted to practice. I went to law school in New York City, and right out of law school, I was actually working as a public defender in Manhattan for about 5 years, which was an amazing experience. I got a lot of trial experience, getting to see criminal cases up front and close. Once my family relocated from New York to Florida, I decided that I wanted to transition fully into immigration because I'm an immigrant myself. So I decided that was a great time in my career to make that transition.
Mhm.
And this was around 2018. I was very fortunate to get my first taste of an NIW. Somebody reached out to me because they heard about this obscure visa category that at that time was kind of becoming very popular after Dinosaur had been around for 2 years. So somebody reached
Yeah.
out to me, and I knew that this was, something interesting. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing visa category. Let me see what I can do.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I decided to take this person on as a client and teach myself NIWs, and he was approved without an RFE. So I thought, wow, if I can do this, I can do this for anyone else. And since
Yeah,
then, I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
doing NIWs and EB1As and all other types of fun visas.
Nice, nice. Actually, your story resonated me a lot as well because I'm also an immigrant. I came to the US in 2021, and my lawyers wanted me to go for the normal category, like the perm and the the normal like EB2 category. But I thought that I should try out this new categories like NIW and EB1, and I end up getting got this EB1. So as you're navigating through this journey, you see a lot of people who are struggling and who wanted to also go to this path. So to start off, what is your view when it comes to the EB1A or NIW cases, and how this has been evolved when you have started, let's say, taking the EB1 or NIW cases?
Yeah, so I think I've been fortunate to see NIWs and EB1s be adjudicated over many years, even though, I started practicing exclusively in 2018. We're already in 2026, so it goes by fast. So I've been
Yeah.
lucky to see the evolution of adjudications. I've been fortunate to see um, changes in administration and see how all of that plays out. And I think that's incredibly valuable insight for attorneys to have that experience, because we're really able to sort of address the needs of the time, I think, and address the trends that are going on. So I think that, for me personally, that has been a huge factor, also forcing me to reconsider a lot of the cases that I used to take and maybe am saying no to today, because I know that adjudication is different today versus 2 or 3 years ago. There are many cases that I'm like, wow, I can't believe this case got approved. This case would never get approved today.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's really important to be able to adapt and realize that, when there is a change in adjudication standards or just a change in policy and priorities, us attorneys have to adapt and also be very transparent with our clients, because our clients are looking for a dream. They are looking for something that is discretionary, right? We
Yeah,
have to put
yeah.
ourselves in the mindset of the immigration officer and try to predict how they're going to decide the case. So having that insight, I think, is incredibly valuable. And I find myself, unfortunately, saying no more often than I do yes, but that's really because I want to, make sure that I give my clients the best chances of approval. And if I think that they don't have a viable case right now, I'd rather say no.
Nice, nice. And is it fair to say, Ingrid, that the kind of education, the kind of decision has been a bit stricter rather than a bit easy path? Because when I saw this like 3-4 years back, since there's not a lot of people coming into this path, so uh, in your view, have you seen this gone like stricter in terms of the policies and in terms of the decisions?
Absolutely. I think there is just a heightened level of scrutiny that we have not seen before. And it does forces us attorneys to adapt and work harder to become better lawyers and better advocates for our clients. I do think, though, that, kind of going back to what I was saying, seeing the changes in adjudication over the years, I do think that these things are sometimes temporary, and they, maybe will improve, hopefully, later on down the road. I think last year we saw NIWs at a 54% approval rate, when in 2022, 2023, it was about 90%. So it just goes to show that for sure the data is telling us that these adjudication standards have gotten a lot stricter.
Yeah, true, true. And in your last, response, you said that you take only like handful of cases, and then you have to say no to more cases. So, if you have to pick, let's say, what is a good case for you, and which where you'll not say no. So, what are the top three things that you look for a case when you have to pick someone?
So, if I'm looking at a national interest waiver petition, I
Hmm.
definitely want to see an advanced degree. PhDs are great. I am focusing on a lot of scientists, researchers, focusing my efforts into helping people who are advancing scientific knowledge in the United States and who have a track record of doing so. So things that kind of get me excited when I see a lead come in is a degree in a STEM field, a researcher profile, somebody with a record of citations. It does not have to be a lot of citations. I do not believe the citations is the end all be all. We have to look at the case comprehensively and holistically. When a person has funding from a government agency, I think that's also really great. And also, I like to see where the person is in their professional career, because I think timing also really matters. So that's definitely something for NIWs that I'm looking into right now. And then for EB1As, I think, I do not approach EB1As as a criteria driven exercise. I want to be able to see and understand my client's story and career arc and be able to say, okay, now is the time to file an EB1A because you really have reached the very top. So I think it's just so individualized, and being able to tell that story is so important for an EB1A. And when I see somebody with, you know, um, an interesting story or something that I think I can center the whole case around, that's an EB1A that I think I find very interesting.
That's really interesting. So if I have to sum up, like basically the NIW cases are the ones which are having advanced degrees, and they are really doing good in their field, versus EB1 is something who has a track record of doing amazing things, and he has been known for his artwork or whatever creative work that has been done so far, right? There is no, let's say, that if you have, let's say, crossed a certain number of experience in your field, that you are eligible for that EB1A criteria. You have to be really, top of your game, and you have to have that story. So I absolutely agree with you that, because a lot of people actually are thinking, especially, like some people, uh, come to me as well, that I mean, I have done this amount of work in my profile and in my work experience, but so can I, let's say, make something like research work, or put some duty on top of my role and just be eligible for that, right? It's not going to work that way. But there's a lot of, like, especially these days, I've seen a lot of people going with that. They're like a manufactured, or
Yes.
a a profile building sort of thing, where they are trying to get some sort of citations going their way and trying to put something. So how do you think, like, this profile building and the manufacturing of the cases have been evolved, and is it really working, do you think?
I think this is such an important topic because I speak to a lot of people who engage in profile building, and they're very well intentioned. And a lot of times, these are my clients from India or China who are facing severe backlogs. So I'm incredibly sympathetic to their situation and their efforts. And it's sometimes a very hard conversation to have when somebody comes to me with a resume or a profile that I can clearly tell was developed over the last year, maybe year and a half
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
purposes of EB1, because I know
yeah,
that person put a lot of time, effort, and sometimes money into this in order to be able to finally get their green card after they've been in the United States for so long, for so many years, doing everything right, and it's just the country of birth that's keeping them from getting that document. So I think that I do find very valuable in having conversations with people because if I can at least, you know, give them insight into maybe a strategy that may work best for their case and help them pivot and think about the time and effort that they are taking into maybe, creating or publishing articles when they are not a researcher, right? Or doing peer reviews when they are not a researcher and all that. I do find that very valuable, and sometimes I see people having a lot of aha moments, right? And thinking, okay, I need to think about this again.
yeah, yeah,
um, for EB1A, I think the danger with profile building is, aside from it being, it is definitely well intentional, but I just think that immigration officers will know. I
yeah,
know when
yeah,
somebody's engaging, and the immigration officer will know too. So I think if a person files a case with that type of evidence, it will become apparent to the immigration officer, and there goes your time, your money, your energy spent in this process, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think one way to help people avoid this trap is to have a understanding of, okay, what is my story, right? I think it all goes back to storytelling because if you
yeah,
are somebody who's working for a tech company or you're an industry professional or you're working in, marketing or you're a software engineer, you are the person behind the scenes of that company. You're not necessarily the person, taking all the credit for the wonderful things that your company is doing in the world, right? So start from that, like understanding what is so natural to a particular occupation, I think is very valuable because unless there is, I think, an organic story being told for the software engineer and the reason why maybe they had to engage in research and publish, it's going to look like patchwork. It's going to
yeah,
look like a
yeah,
quilt with a bunch
yeah,
of different pieces that don't go together. And I think that ends up harming more than helping. Same thing
yeah,
with memberships. People sometimes spend so much time and effort trying to become members of certain associations. And immigration won't accept it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So there's just a lot here, I think, that needs to be said and talked about in about
Yeah,
this in
yeah,
particular.
yeah. I think I look at all of this work as more of a, career advance or a career progress move. So if somebody is, so like that's my suggestion here is, so if somebody is coming in and want to pursue this EB1A category, especially, they have to see how much impact that they have done in their own work. So if let's say if they don't know, if the work, what they're doing, how to make that valuable, and how to, develop the story around their own professional career, like they don't like then they won't like stand a chance, no matter how easily you can get into the membership roles, and and somebody can do the citations for you, but if you're not getting impactful, and if you don't have a followers who are, or you're not inspiring anyone, you don't have a chance to do it, right? So people sometimes, in my opinion, are often going wrong, where they're just saying that, hey, my colleague is getting a lot of membership opportunities, my somebody who is doing the profile building for him, but like, so I can do the same thing as well. So there is something like a trap going on. But
Mhm.
if the people can realize that it's more of a, if you think, if you really want to work towards it, yes, you can work towards it, but you have to be really aim it towards building your career, not just
Exactly.
about, profile building approach.
I agree 100%. And what ends up happening with a profile building approach is that your profile ends up looking like everybody else's.
Yeah,
And therefore, you
exactly.
are not extraordinary and you don't stand out.
Exactly. All right, moving on out of it. So, talking about the UCIS, how do they really like evaluate the impact? So, uh, if you have like, if you are, let's say, an immigration officer who wants to evaluate the case, so how do you assess, like, if you have like two profiles coming in? One profile has the senior IEEE memberships, all the fellowships, and the similar profile has also those things, but he also has more experience on it. So, do you have a different way of evaluating such two cases, or what are the things that you'll be looking for?
Yeah. So I think that USCIS officers are probably overworked, and maybe morale right now at the agency is kind of low. I had somebody working in my office recently who was a retired immigration officer, so he gave us a lot of juicy insights into how the
Nice.
agency works. So I'd be happy to share those with you here
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that right now the agency has low morale, people are overworked or whatnot, and they're also nervous about, keeping their jobs. Um, and I think there's a lot of new hires at the agency, and perhaps training is not the best yet. These people are new, maybe they're unfamiliar with these kinds of visas, so all of this comes into play. I think that immigration officers are being very careful right now to, in their adjudications. I think that they are not necessarily looking for reasons to deny, but they are highly scrutinizing everything that you submit. And you have to keep in mind that an immigration officer is maybe going to take an hour and a half tops to review your case. So presentation also really matters. Um, Quality over quantity is key. Being able to tell that story and have that main idea running throughout the entire petition, every single document, I think is so critical. It's, I think, what makes a case stand out is the ability of maybe the attorney or whoever is preparing it to synthesize the information and be able to tell a compelling story right away, which is something that I like to do in my petitions and my briefs for my EB1A clients. I want the immigration officer to know right away what makes this person extraordinary. And I
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
try to maybe connect with the person reading the case. And I can give you a little bit of a quick example. I recently
Yeah.
had a client.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recently
Love
had a
to. Yeah.
client who, we had their EB1A petition approved with only 3 criteria. Clearly an
Nice.
industry professional. But the thing that stood out about this person was that he was somebody who was a named inventor on this technology, this QR code payment technology that really revolutionized how, or is revolutionizing how we purchase goods and services. So, and he, the first thing that I asked him to tell me was, okay, well, tell me more about this. And he's like, well, when we first started buying things, we used money. Then it was credit cards. Then it was digital wallets. And now we are at QR code payments where you can make
Yeah,
payments
yeah,
without
yeah,
logging into the internet. And I was like,
yeah.
wow, that is your elevator pitch to immigration. And that is how we are going to center, we're going to center your case around that. So I think like that is so powerful, right? And
True,
and
true,
and
true.
it's not a patchwork, here's everything that I have done. It's, what is your claim to fame? What makes you a big fish in a little pond? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, true, true.
And let's build your case around that.
Nice, nice. Just to add on to what you're saying is, so you mentioned a very interesting point earlier that UCIS is short of resources these days, and if you ask any immigrant here in the US, they just want to know, I mean, what resources USCIS has when they have to go through and do the verification of your artifacts and your evidences. So I'll tell you my story about it. So when I was like when my like lawyers were preparing my petitions, they asked me that, hey, can you take a printout of all your evidences and everything? So I used to run these podcast shows back there, like earlier as well. So I wanted to give them the YouTube link to show them that how much famous I am, and how much work that I have done. So what they were telling me is that UCIS don't have the internet, and you have to just print out whatever your videos are, just print out on that page and just give us to us. So is that really not true that they don't have access to the internet? Like forget about AI, so
No, they definitely have access to the internet, but I think it's important to know that immigration, the officer is making a decision on your case based what's on the record. And
uh,
they are able to go online and maybe do a little bit of their own research if they want to, if they're willing to, if they have time, right? So they definitely have access to the internet. And I think that an immigration officer who is exclusively working on high skill visa petitions will see the same thing come in through over and over and over. So
yeah,
over
yeah,
time,
yeah.
they develop their own knowledge base, right? So they can easily tell
Nice.
that the IEEE senior membership is not something that qualifies as a membership under the
Yeah,
EB1A criteria.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think they develop that knowledge base as well. But, not every immigration officer is going to go out there and do their own research. So that's why thinking about case presentation is very important, because you want to present something that speaks for itself, right? So sometimes how do you present a YouTube podcast, right? You
yeah,
may just want to do a screenshot and submit one page that has all the information versus submitting dozens and dozens of pages of maybe the transcripts of the podcast that you're doing, because the officer is not going to see that. We need to
yeah,
give them a
yeah,
bird's
yeah,
eye view of your
yeah.
evidence and why you qualify. So presentation is so important, I think, also.
Nice, nice. And do you think you mentioned about the knowledge base? So do you think when you submit a profile, they or from your experience and from looking at the RFEs and all those things, do you think that the UCIS go to the LinkedIn profiles as well and just go and screen who they are looking into?
I don't think that they do it every time, but I think they certainly can if there are things in a petition that maybe raises red flags, like inconsistencies, or, if one letter is structurally and very similar to maybe another letter, it may inquire further inquiry. I mean, the officer may do a further inquiry. I like to include, for example, a resume or maybe a LinkedIn profile of the person who's submitting that expert opinion letter. I know some lawyers don't necessarily follow this practice, right? But I like to do it. And as much as possible, I like to have letters written on letterhead as much as possible to add a level of credibility as well. So I think it just all depends on the individual case. But these tools are definitely available to the officer. And
Yeah.
Of course, they are scrutinizing cases even more now for fraud and misrepresentation and fabricated evidence. So I think you should expect the immigration officer to scrutinize your case and maybe dig a little deeper. And I think even USCIS itself has sort of like their own, um, you know, their own technology to sort of help comb through this.
Got it. And do you think do they have like industry experts as well? Where, for example, if somebody coming in from the data science background, and the immigration officer don't have knowledge about what this data science is, so do they also consult some SMEs to help them through this case?
I don't think so. At least I'm pretty sure that they don't, because the thing is also, it's impossible for you to have an expert in every topic, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
impossible to have an expert give an expert opinion. The immigration officer is supposed to decide the case based on the evidence on the record. And that's why I think part of our job as attorneys is to educate the immigration officer into what the client is doing. I'm not an expert in data science and I'm not an expert in QR code technology, but after enough conversations, I'm able to take that very technical explanation that my client is giving and write it in a simple way, right? Because when I first talked to this one client in particularly, and he was explaining to me everything, and I'm like, whoa, like bring it down to earth for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk
So,
to me like I'm in middle school because I don't understand all of these acronyms and what these things mean. Just tell me in simple terms, right? And
true,
and
true,
how and that requires time, that requires attention, that requires, I think, curiosity, right?
true.
And I think us attorneys having a general understanding of what's going on with technology, if that's our demographic of clients, like, right, what's going on in maybe cancer research, if our clients are working in cancer research, I think it's important for us too to stay knowledgeable and up to date of what's going on in these
True.
industries that our clients are in.
I think translating this technical knowledge into an easy explanation is such a powerful thing. So I feel like if you are really good at what you do, you can whatever you do, like research or rocket science or whatever state of an art, if you can make your grandma understand what this is all about, then you can definitely be able to help the immigration officer as well, right? So that is what I feel like. Like there's a now good segue to get into that evidence sort of like segment. So, in your view, if you have to look at the evidences or what you have seen that evidence, like evidence that has worked. So, in your case, in your experience, like recommendation letters are something which are really powerful, right? Which can really give the credibility to the case. So, what is a good recommendation letter looks for you?
I call recommendation letters in my office expert testimonials. I come from a litigation background and I've done trials and hearings, and an expert testimonial should be the same thing as testimony in court. It needs to be objective, it needs to be credible, it needs to be factual, it needs to be um, driven by metrics and quantifiable data. So I like to think and frame my expert opinion letters just like that, right? Um, Understanding where the person is coming from, their
Yeah,
background, their
yeah,
bases of knowledge, establishing their expertise is very important in these letters, and establishing um, their knowledge of the field and experience overall to help the immigration officer understand the context, right? I think letters serves they serve very specific purposes. At least this is how I see them in my case. So people often ask me, how many letters do I need? I'm like, well, I don't know yet. It all depends on what your case sometimes looks like, because I file NIWs sometimes without letters. And that's done very strategically because I know the evidence can speak for itself. And if we get an RFE, I like to save expert opinion letters in my pocket, right, to be able to respond to that RFE.
very
Um,
smart, very smart.
yeah. And then I think it also depends on the type of case and the type of profile. So for EB1As, for example, expert opinion letters are very good to confirm a person's critical or leading role and a person's original contribution of major significance, right? Because there's always, for EB1A, we have elements to each criterion
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
have to hit. I have used an expert opinion letter, for example, to be able to put more context into an award. And I have a case that was approved that way. So, you can use them very strategically and with a lot of purpose and intention. Um, and I think it's all about, being able to convey the information that you
Good.
need the immigration officer to get. And these letters, I mean, I sometimes go through 5, 6 drafts of the letters because until they answer everything that I need them to answer, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's not a good letter. And every time I draft every time I create a draft, I have more questions. So
Yeah.
there's more
Yeah. Yeah.
gaps to fill. So that's how I like to use letters.
Nice. And do you think letters, like recommendation letters without letterhead, are okay? Or do you think letterhead would add real value to
They're
it?
fine. I mean, they're fine, I think that letters, if it's coming from someone who's maybe constrained by putting the letter on a
Yeah.
letterhead,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay. So I think in those circumstances, I think it is important to offer information about the writer himself or herself. So what I like to do sometimes is if the person has like a bio profile on maybe a company website, or maybe they have their biography, or maybe their work on a university website. I like to print that, and of course, like maybe a resume or a LinkedIn profile or whatnot, just to add credibility to that letter.
True, true. I also feel the same way. It's about how you frame your case and whether you are putting all the context into it as well, rather than just putting the letterhead. Because I have people like reaching out to me for these questions that, that, hey, I know a VP, he's a very good reference, he has worked with me and he knows my expertise, but he's from a big company, so how can I get the letter from him giving me on the letterhead, right? So I think it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's all relevant, right? Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if this person is speaking about the petitioner through their own personal individual capacity, then, a letterhead, they may be limited, by their own employer being able to put that information on the letterhead because they're not speaking on behalf of the company. However,
Exactly. Exactly.
if this is a person who maybe you collaborated with, or maybe worked with, or maybe you had a contract with this particular company, and they are, a representative from that company is writing about the amazing work and the results that you achieved, I would expect that letter to be on letterhead because now this person is speaking on behalf of the company. Same thing for letters that, for example, a critical role letter, right? If it's coming from a manager or a CEO or whatever, right? Or HR, that letter should be on letterhead. It shouldn't come from a
True,
person in
true,
their own
true, true,
individual capacity.
true.
So I think you just have to be very careful and thoughtful the purpose of the letter and make a decision. And of course, if there's still constraints, then you go with the next best thing.
Nice, nice. So now I have to ask you something which is really, which is how I got into this EB1 journey. Is something which inspired you. So is there a story that you can recall that you have worked on a case which has a really low chance of getting through, but with your sort of skills and with your sort of framing, that case has gotten approved, and that guy has really, blown away with this.
Yes, so I can think of a couple of cases. In the EB1A context, a case that I had approved last year, actually, for a client who came to me, and I guess he tells me after the fact, he told me that he spoke to many lawyers, and he decided to go with me, even though I told him his case was 50-50. I was like, I think your case has a 50-50 chance. His his case was definitely not the typical EB1A case, but I saw something in his case, and I think it's because of the personal connection that I had with this client. This client worked in New York City as
Hmm.
a construction project manager, and he told me how he was involved in the redevelopment and reuse of some of New York City's iconic buildings that are in sort of like the
Right.
National Archives, right?
That's
And he
powerful.
was able to name two of the buildings. And he talked about how he was also involved in some projects that were the first of their kind around the country. And these were residential projects that didn't necessarily have this historic, tie to it. And I was like, okay, I'm from New York. I know that New York real estate is a really big deal and a reference for the
Yeah.
country and and a reference for the world. I
Yeah.
also know that the New York City skyline is iconic. And he's working on these iconic buildings, right?
Nice.
So
Nice.
I was like, okay, if I can tell a story around that, I think I can get this EB1A. I think I can get this EB1A approved. So we submitted the case, and we did get an RFE. I was very pleased with this RFE because it looked like the officer actually read everything that we submitted. So we felt very good. I responded to the RFE and answering every question, every really good question that the officer had. And then of course later on I look back and I'm like, wow, I should have known that maybe I was going to get these questions, but sometimes the client wants to file or whatnot, so we file, right? And his case was approved. And I was like, wow, somebody who's a construction project manager working in New York City, and I was concerned that this case was going to get pushed back based on the regionality of the work, right? But we were able
Yeah.
to talk about and convince the officer that New York City's impact in real estate is really national. Everybody wants to come to New York, and and we won. So,
Nice. Nice.
yeah, so
Nice.
now we're waiting for he's an Indian national, so now we're waiting for the priority date to become current, which is
Nice.
very close. So we're gonna get him and his wife the green card.
This is
So
so
that was a great case.
nice, nice. I also remember one message recently came to my DM. So there's one person. So when I got my EB1, a lot of people reach out to me that, hey, how did you get through this, and what you did and what not, what has worked for you, and all those things. So there's one person who called me, and he was really confused on what he should do, and he has already spent like a lot in that profile building case. And I had a call with him, and I don't exactly remember what I guided him, but then I saw his message like couple of weeks back that, hey, thank you so much for your guidance, whatever you have like asked me, I did that and it worked for me, and thank you, and almost. So I I don't exactly remember what I guided him, but that was 1.5 years back. But those messages kind of really inspires, right? And that's the reason of you to push an extra mile for your clients, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I like to really work on cases that I believe in because I will go above and beyond. It's tough when you have a case and you're like, oh, this is not good. Your heart's just not in it. It's just human nature, I think, so I try as best as I can to screen every client that I take, be transparent, give realistic expectations, and ensure that the client is also up for the challenge because this is not a walk in the park. This
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
collaboration. You're going to be spending time. Your lawyer is not going to do everything for you. We're going to guide you on what we need, and the output will be as good as the input. That's very
True, true.
important. And
Yeah,
sometimes I have to have these conversations with clients in the middle of the case to bring them down to earth and say, hey, listen, you know, you need to give us what we're looking for. And,
exactly. Exactly.
don't fight me on this because this is important, right? And I
That is
have to
so
have those
powerful.
conversations
Yeah.
sometimes. And,
Yeah.
they're uncomfortable, but we want the best outcome,
Exactly.
and
I think that's so true and that's so powerful. With the kind of trends I'm seeing these days, people are more looking at the autopilot and an AI-driven mode where they just don't have to do anything, and they're expecting their lawyers or their mentors to do everything for them. And when you ask them, hey, I mean, this is something which is needed from you, right? So they said that, I mean, I don't have time for this, and so dude, why are you coming into this if you don't have time? So you have to set the expectations real upfront. That is so good, and
yeah.
that is so true. Okay, moving on to the trends. So any interesting trend that you have seen with the kind of approvals you're seeing, or the rejections you have seen, like lately, to how this uh, where the UCIS is going, basically.
Yeah, I think that NIW wise, industry, good old fashioned industry professionals who I consider to be very successful people, very smart, accomplished, people who are working for maybe one employer, doing really amazing work. Even if their work, even if the field is important, even if they are working on a critical technology, those cases are an uphill battle right now. That's just the reality. So, for industry professionals, I think it is so important to have really great evidence of implementation of the work, commercialization of their work, impact of their work outside of the employer and the customers or clients. So, that's very, very important. It can still be done, but I think it is not as easy as it was once a few years ago. So that's number one. With EB1As, I think that the pattern that I'm seeing is a lot of people who meet 3, 4 criteria and get denied on the final merits. And I think what that's really teaching me is the power of editing. Power of, the editing is very powerful. We don't have to present everything in an EB1A case because the final merit is sort of the killer for a lot of these petitions, right?
Yeah.
And being able to really look at a case and say, okay, we really only need 3. How can we show that this person has really reached a level that justifies filing this EB1A, right? And how can we tell that compelling story for the final merits, right? And I like to think of that one client with the QR code payment. It was only 3 criteria: original contribution of major significance, critical or leading role, and salary. That's it. Nothing else. He didn't need to be publishing. He didn't need to be,
Mm, mm.
doing peer reviews. You know, he was out there talking about the
Yeah.
technology. He
Yeah.
was sort of, you could tell that he was somebody who was really representing the company and representing that the next frontier of payment technology, of financial technologies. And his case was approved. And then, of course, I see other cases where, a person will have 3, 4, 5 criteria and be denied on the final merits. It has happened to me. It has happened to every single attorney, I think, who practices in this field. And it's devastating because you go back
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, um, we should have thought about that or whatnot, and sometimes I think us attorneys have to put our foot down with the clients, and say, I understand you've been looking forward to this for a very long time, but I do not want, this evidence will hurt you as opposed to help you. And it's very important, I think, to have that conversation with the clients. At the end of the day, the case belongs to the clients and they will
Yeah.
make the ultimate decision. But I
Yeah.
think it needs to be an informed decision because we can't just throw everything in there and hope something will stick.
Got it. Got it. One trend I'm seeing, Ingrid, recently is the adjustment of status is taking a lot of time, right? When you are done with your like I-140, and you are submitting your AOS. So, is there a reason why the UCI is taking so much time to just decide on this, or is there a reason why they are doing this?
Well, there are some things that I can definitely point to. I mean, normal processing times have the way that immigration is calculating normal processing times has changed. I think late last year. I forget exactly what they're doing, but the way that they're processing cases has changed. Requiring people to come into interviews is something that also adds to the timeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, on Friday, actually, I had 2 I-45s be approved that I filed, I believe, November of last year, and they were approved without interviews based on NIWs. So you have these situations that sort of surprise you. And
Yeah.
then yesterday, Friday, this is February 28th, so February 27th, I was just talking to another couple in my office, beneficiaries of approved I-140 NIWs, right? And they were called in for interviews. So there are things that we just kind of don't know. I do think that there are um, factors inside USCIS. And in fact, this was something that the former the adjudicator that worked for me, told me about, that USCIS has a set of factors that they look at in the case to escalate. So, and we're talking specifically for family-based cases, but I imagine that immigration has the same set of factors for other case types as well. So perhaps countries where there's a high rate of overstays, visa,
Uh, mm,
misrepresentation, and all of that, I think that is being taken into account. The 75 country visa ban right now also has wide reaching ripple effects. And I think
yeah, yeah.
some immigration offices are dealing with it a little bit differently than others. Like, for example, I have heard from colleagues that certain cases have been paused. Certain adjustment of status adjudications have been paused because of a so-called directive or something that the immigration officer at the day of the interview cannot point to, right? And this person was from a country with the visa ban, but however the guidance, right, and everything that we know about the visa, not visa ban, the pause,
Uh,
does not point to anything about adjustment of status also being paused
yeah,
because you are
yeah.
from a country, one of those 75 countries. We're talking specifically about immigrant visa issuances abroad. So all these things are, I think, important to take into consideration. There are things that are in your control and there are things that aren't. And
I think, I
also where
think
you live. Yeah.
the best. I saw your post. I think it was a month back, and 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 please correct me here if I'm not quoting it right. So what you said is which really is powerful to me is that if you have an approved I-140, and if you have filed your AOS, and as long as you are on your job, you don't have to worry about it. If it's taking time, then it's just time, and it's the time is taking because the processing time is longer. It has nothing to do with you, or or anything for that matter. So that is something which I really like, that because if you like what I feel is, if you have done everything right and your case is approved, then it's just a matter of time. I don't see
Yeah.
a reason why the UCAS will go back and see it and say that, hey, your case has some issues, right? Is that the right understanding?
I think yes and no, because immigration, what happens inside USCIS is sort of happening behind the wall that we can't see through. So having insight into the inner workings and procedures of immigration helps kind of ground us and keep us a little bit more, less afraid of what's going on. Sometimes clients are very worried. Why is my case taking so long, right?
Yeah,
There
yeah.
are situations where a case is taking long because there is a history of tricky immigration issues, maybe denials, maybe, I don't know, a finding of misrepresentation, or maybe, questioning a DS-160. There are all sorts of reasons why, but every single case goes through a normal procedural step-by-step analysis, different stages to background checks and procedural safeguards. So sometimes if a case is taking an obscene amount of time, it can be a red flag, but we kind of know, we should be able to know why, because if the person does have a complicated immigration history, we can expect that to happen. Now, if a person has a completely, you know, clean immigration record, no issues, everything done correctly, and the case seems to just have fallen through the cracks, well, sometimes that happens as well. Inside USCIS, I had a naturalization case one time be sent to the National Archives, and they couldn't find this case. And my client had to file suit in federal court to get immigration to make a decision,
Uh,
So there is human error inside USCIS as well. So I think understanding that is very important, keeping track of what's happening inside of your jurisdiction, keeping track of trends and all of this, because there's a lot that we still don't know,
Got it. So
of the
if
inner
in
warning.
case if there is an EB1A or an NIW case which is approved for I-140, and if the case is taking longer, is there anything that the client can do, or you as your client's advocate, is there anything that you guys can do to speed up, or just ask the UCAs, hey, what's going on, with this?
Yeah. So I mean, we have like the self-service tools, the e-request tools, and
Yeah.
those are not very satisfying solutions because you're going to see that the case processing times vary significantly. I always like to say that the case processing times on the USCIS website is a carrot being dangled in front of you. So don't pay too much attention to that. Clients will sometimes, my case is taking too long, and I'm like, look, here's a screenshot from the normal processing times. Here's a screenshot from the e-request I try to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It said I can't do anything. So I'm sorry. I know this is unsatisfactory. It doesn't mean your case is going to get denied. It's just it's just your place in line, right?
Yeah.
There's millions of
Exactly.
other people in
That's a
front
good
of
way
you.
of.
You got to wait your turn. Of course, if things get excessive, that's when we have to figure out, okay, let's do an e-request. If the e-request was put through, accepted, if there's no response, we do another e-request. We can call, we can push, we can seek congressional, we can make a congressional inquiry. If all those things do not work, then you have to consider whether or not it's time to file a lawsuit. And not a lot of people want to sue the federal government, right? But it's a remedy. It's a remedy that
Yeah.
should not necessarily that should not have weight on the merits of your case, right? It's
True.
simply
True.
because the
True.
government is not doing their job. So there is just so I think it's so difficult to
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
comfort someone, because immigration, they are just one case, right? And for
Yeah.
them, this is everything. So
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it's understandable for sure.
Nice, nice. So I love how you explain so many options where when I've talked to different lawyers on this, but they don't have any options. They said that we cannot do anything about it, right? But if you have a good legal team, there are options. So that's what I'm hearing right now. Great. So moving on to our last section, Ingrid, that's been so far it's been so insightful, and thank you for sharing all the secret, insights and the recipes and everything that this immigration journey is all about, right? So okay, so are you ready for our rapid fire round?
Yes, I am. So it's one sentence answer only, right? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm ready.
yeah. EB1A or NIW, which one is harder right now?
NIW is harder right now.
Okay, and the reason is because it's just too much applications.
Uh, Too many petitions. I think the dust is still settling. We need, people to stop submitting NIWs drafted by AI. People should maybe consult with a lawyer if they're going to do it on their own, just to
Yeah,
kind of see if they have a shot or not. Yeah, I think it's just sadly just a lot of maybe bad cases that are clogging the system.
nice, nice. Most overrated EB1 credential.
I will say citations and well, actually, no, let me take that back. Sorry, this is more than one sentence. But I will say um, publications or articles, scholarly articles for people in industry, for software engineers and people in technology.
All right, can I choose this one as well? I
Yeah.
would say the senior IEEE membership.
Oh, good one. Really good one. Yeah.
Okay, biggest RFE trigger.
Okay. Um, for NIWs or for EB1s?
Uh, for EB1. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, Oof. Okay. Throwing everything under the sun and claiming every single criteria, or as eight,
Yeah,
10,
yeah, yeah.
eight criteria. I think that's a big RFE trigger.
I would also choose if you are putting everything in 6 months.
That's true.
you're
Yes.
you're just calling for danger. Okay. Like this one is good. Like quantity or quality of evidence.
Quality always.
Quality of evidence. So with this, you mean that it has to be contextualized. It has to be following your story, right?
Yes, it should speak for itself. One piece of really great evidence is better than 5 or 10, you know, weak pieces of evidence for sure.
True, true, true. Self petition or employer backed.
I love self petitions because I like to argue and I like to persuade, but do both. Do both when
Yeah,
you can.
yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. One thing applicants should stop doing.
Comparing themselves to others and profile
Very true.
building.
True. 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 One thing they should start doing it.
Educating themselves about these visa options. Very
Yeah, yeah,
powerful.
yeah. One thing I would add it here is they should start thinking about making impactful decisions in their careers and think about going to a next level in their career, or to
Mhm.
help the community to grow and to help the industry to make some impact on it. If they have this mindset, then they will be automatically getting through that EB1 journey, right? So
Agree.
yeah. uh, so last one, EB1 success depends most on talent, or is it timing or storytelling?
All of the above.
True, true. I would also pick the same thing. Okay. Final wisdom. I think Ingrid, you have like already like given us a lot of insights, and it's great to have you on the show. But what's one belief every EB1 or NIW applicant should carry into this process? If you have to,
Yeah, if your case gets denied, it's not because you're not good enough. I at least, sometimes it's because, the case may have not been put together correctly. Sometimes it's because you should have never filed, but it doesn't mean you're not good enough. So if it's denied today, it doesn't mean it won't be denied. It doesn't mean it's going to be denied maybe in the future, right? But I think knowledge, strategic, strategic timing, looking at it objectively, is very important. Be critical, be self-critical of yourself, and your case, right? Maybe talk to more than one attorney, talk to many attorneys so you can sort of see where each one of them is coming from. You'll learn a lot through that.
nice, nice, good one. So that's bring us into our show. Uh, Thank you very much again for coming to our show. If people have to reach out to you, I know you've been very active on LinkedIn. I've seen your posts a lot. But is there any other way that people can reach out to you, like Instagram, Facebook?
Absolutely. So, LinkedIn, you can search me by my name, Ingrid Perez. You can search my law firm, IBP Immigration Law. I am also in the process of developing my YouTube channel where I talk exclusively about high skill visas. And I believe that you can find me there as well if you search for IBP Law, Facebook at IBP Law, or my name. I'm sure it's going to pop up. I have a TikTok where I answer questions, and it's a lot of
Nice.
fun. It's a more informal type of environment. So I love answering questions. And it's amazing how many people on TikTok are aware of these options. And I think it's a lot of fun. So yeah,
Very
and my
nice.
website, ibplaw.com.
Nice, nice. So, so Ingrid, again, thank you. So for all of our audience who is watching this show, please reach out to Ingrid. I have talked to many lawyers. I've also interviewed like several of them, but the kind of authenticity and genuineness I see in her responses, it's been great, and I'm sure that she'll do a great justice to your case, and yeah, if you want to be in the safe hands, reach out to Ingrid Perez.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
That's all from our side. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this show. If you have any comments, any thoughts, something which you don't like it, please do reach out to us and give us your comments, and we'll be happy to answer it. And please, just one last message from my side. Uh, like immigrations cases are very important, and they should be looked into very carefully and thoughtfully as well. Please don't go into somebody who is just doing the profile, bringing building for you just for the sake of making you superstar in like 3 to 4 months. It's like this process is about building your profile organically. If you want to really build your profile, think about how you can make the impact in the industry, how you can make the impact in the peers around you, and also the work that you are doing. So always think about creating a story for yourself, and if you can be able to do it, then you will be in a better position to target or pursue these EB1 or NIW cases. That's the message from my side. Any final words you want to say before we go off?
Just thank you for having me. And I think having these conversations are so important. I really enjoyed it. Um, and, I'm happy to come back whenever you have me.
Thank you, great. Okay, everyone, thank you very much, and take a very good care of yourself. Take care. Bye.